the Moon, since her creation 4.5 billion years ago, has given away very little about her dark side. What many are not aware of is that there are two sides of the Moon, and the tidal forces between Earth and Moon have slowed down the latter's rotation in such a way that the same side of the Moon is always facing the Earth. The side of the Moon that Earthlings can see is called the near side, and the opposite side, which is never visible in its entirety from Earth, is also known as the far side of the Moon, and rather popularly, the dark side of the Moon. For thousands of years, humankind's curiosity towards this dark side eventually led to the exploration where this mystifying far hemisphere of the Moon was first photographed by the Soviet probe Luna 3 in 1959, and directly observed by the human eye during the orbital mission of Apollo 8. The official verdict was that the far side is the same as the near side, covered with craters and highlands. But rumor has it that there's an alien base on the far side of the Moon. Many would doubt this because by now almost everyone has seen the photographs of both sides of the Moon taken so nicely by the Western satellite probes, and evidently their information showed no signs of life or intelligent structures on the surface of the Moon. But before all of this, since the time Neil Armstrong became the first man to walk on the Moon on July the 21st, 1969, there was speculation that during their stay on the Moon's surface, the crew of Apollo 11 was never all by themselves. The following conversation between Apollo 11 and NASA Mission Control that took place still mystifies people to date. Apollo 11, Armstrong and Aldrin.
What was it? What the hell was it? That's all I want to know. These babies were huge, sir. Oh God, you wouldn't believe it. What? What the hell's going on? They're here, under the surface. What's there? Mission Control calling Apollo 11. Roger, we're here, all three of us, but we've found some visitors. They've been here for quite a while, judging by the installations. I'm telling you, there are other spacecrafts out there. They're lined up in ranks on the far side of the crater edge. They're on the Moon, watching us.
According to noted Russian ufologist and professor of mathematics of Moscow University, Dr. Vladimir Azaza, this encounter took place shortly after the landing of the Apollo 11, but the report of this encounter was never heard by the public as NASA censored it. According to Otto Binder, a former NASA employee, amateur radio enthusiasts on a classified channel reserved for high-security messages overheard the conversation. In 1979, Maurice Chantelane, NASA's communications expert, who also helped design Apollo spacecrafts, publicly stated that the encounter between Apollo 11 and the UFOs was common knowledge within NASA. One might wonder what Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin had to say about all this. Both of them publicly admitted later in life that they did encounter UFOs on the Moon, and Armstrong, the first human to walk on the Moon, said during a NASA symposium their ships were far superior to ours, both in size and technology. Boy, they were big and menacing. He went on to say that there is indeed an alien base on the Moon. Another former NASA astronaut and fifth man to walk on the Moon, Dr. Edgar Mitchell of Apollo 14, in a radio interview in 2008, admitted to the existence of alien life forms, describing the beings as little people who look strange to us. And in his own words, "I happen to have been privileged enough to be in on the fact that we've been visited on this planet and the UFO phenomena is real." While NASA has seemingly given up on its plans to send humans back to the surface of the Moon anytime soon, a contractor is proposing a mission to send a crew to a stationary spot in orbit over the far side of Earth's neighbor. Lockheed Martin has begun pitching an L2 Farside mission using its Orion spacecraft under development. It is seen as an intermediate step towards more challenging missions beyond low Earth orbit. Using the latest technology, an astronaut crew would teleoperate robots on the lunar surface. Lockheed Martin says such an endeavor could sharpen skills and technologies needed for a trip to an asteroid, as well as showcase techniques useful for exploring Mars by teleoperation as astronauts orbit the red planet. Both are stated goals under the new direction for NASA outlined by the former President Obama. In February 2010, the White House issued its proposed NASA budget that aced out former President George W. Bush's Constellation program. That plan had benchmarked 2020 as the date to replant the feet of US astronauts on the moon after the last set of moonwalkers departed the landscape back in 1972. Instead, former President Obama laid out the goal of sending astronauts beyond the moon and into deep space. He aimed to land people on an asteroid for the first time in history by 2025 and send a crew to Mars by the mid-2030s. Space planners at Lockheed Martin Space Systems in Denver proposed using their Orion capsule to support an L2 Farside moon mission, one that allows an astronaut crew to have continuous line-of-sight visibility to both the entire far side of the moon and Earth. The crew members aboard NASA's Apollo 8 mission in 1968 were the first to set human eyes on that hidden real estate permanently turned away from the Earth. The Earth-Moon L2 Lagrange point is where the combined gravity of the Earth and the Moon allow a spacecraft to hover over one spot and be synchronized with the Moon in its orbit around the Earth. From a halo orbit around that L2 point, a crew would control robots on the lunar surface. Teleoperated science tasks include snagging rock specimens for return to Earth from the Moon's South Pole Aitken Basin, one of the largest, deepest, and oldest craters in the solar system, as well as deploy a radio telescope array on the far side. We have come up with a sequence of missions that we've named Stepping Stones, which begins with flights in low Earth orbit and incrementally builds towards a human mission to the moons of Mars in the 2030s. The first Orion missions to the moon's far side, viewed as feasible by 2016 to 2018, never took place. Its plan was to accomplish science goals on the lunar surface using robotic rovers controlled by astronauts in space, as practice for doing the same thing at Mars, Hopkins told Space.com. The citizens of the world have sat patiently waiting for the mission to initiate, but what came back from NASA and contractors was more silent than space itself. Many await explanations why lunar exploration came to a halt and why it is seemingly more difficult to do now what was achieved by NASA back in the 1960s. The far side of the moon is forever hidden from the naked eye on Earth, but now scientists have developed a simple way to describe how it looks, and in doing so could shed light on its enigmatic history. The simple mathematical formula they devised explains at least a quarter of the moon's geography and geology, including the lunar far side's highlands. The near and far sides of the moon are very different. For instance, elevations on the far side are some 1.2 miles, 1.9 kilometers higher on average, and understanding the roots of those differences could shed light on the mysterious early days of the moon. Researchers discovered the formula while analyzing sets of lunar topography and gravity data. The stretch of the moon's far side surface, explained by the new formula, has to be the oldest lunar feature seen yet, since it lies beneath the ancient South Pole Aitken Basin. The mathematics of it is similar to what applies to Jupiter's tidal effects on its moon Europa. Europa in many ways is different from the moon, but early on the moon had a liquid ocean under its crust, and it likely shares this in common with present-day Europa, Garrick Bethel said. The ocean for the moon was of liquid rock, not water. Just as the moon tugs on Earth's oceans, generating tides, so does the Earth pull at the moon. The researchers suggest that roughly 4.4 billion years ago, when the moon was less than 100 million years old and its crust floated on an ocean of molten rock, these tidal effects caused distortions that were later frozen in place. People have been thinking about tidal explanations for the large-scale structure and shape of the moon for the last 100 years, Garrick Bethel said. The new thing here was to look at only one specific region of the moon that is very old, rather than to test the hypotheses over the moon as a whole, which was done previously. As a whole, the moon exhibits a wide range of geologic processes, some young and some old, so I don't think it's fair to explore it as a whole. These findings yield insight into the fundamental process that built the lunar crust. I would like to map out how this terrain may actually extend to other parts of the moon and encompass even more surface area than we initially reported, he said. He added, the far side of the moon continues to be a focus of attention recently after China landed a probe there to conduct experiments. Many have postulated over the idea of the huge amount of money that could be made from mining the lunar ore, However, there are those that say just because we plant an American flag on the moon does not necessarily mean it's not already owned by something or someone else.
Despite 6 announced visits by United States astronauts between 1969 and 1972, the Moon remains a riddle to scientists in many regards. The solution to this riddle could indicate an alien aspect of our familiar Moon. Dr. Robert Jastrow, the first chairman of NASA's Lunar Exploration Committee, called the Moon the Rosetta Stone of the planets. Scientists had hoped that by studying the composition of the Moon, they would resolve some of the mysteries of how our planet and solar system came into existence. However, 6 moon landings later, science writer Earl Ubel declared, "The lunar Rosetta Stone remains a mystery." The Moon is more complicated than anyone expected. It is not simply a kind of billiard ball frozen in space and time, as many scientists had believed. Few of the fundamental questions have been answered, but the Apollo rocks and recordings have spawned a score of mysteries. A few breath-stopping mysteries, or anomalies, as scientists prefer to call them, is the fact that the Moon is far older than previously imagined, perhaps even much older than the Earth and the Sun. By examining tracks burned into moon rocks by cosmic rays, scientists have dated the rocks as billions of years old. Some as far back as 4.5 billion years, far older than the Earth, and nearly as old as the solar system. The Moon has at least 3 distinct layers of rocks. Contrary to the idea that heavier objects sink, the heavier rocks are found on the surface, and there is a definite disparity in the distribution of minerals. If the Earth and Moon were created at the same time, near each other, why has one body, the Earth, got all the iron, gold, etc., and the other, the Moon, not much? The differences suggest that Earth and Moon came into being far away from each other, an idea that stumbles over the inability of astrophysicists to explain how exactly the Moon became a satellite of Earth. The Moon is extremely dry and does not appear ever to have had water in any substantial amounts. None of the moon rocks, regardless of where they were found, contained free water or even water molecules bound into the minerals. Yet Apollo 16 astronauts found moon rocks that contained bits of rusted iron. Since oxidation requires oxygen and free hydrogen, this rust indicates there must be water somewhere on the Moon. Furthermore, instruments left behind by Apollo missions sent a signal to Earth on the 7th of March 1971, indicating that a wind of water had crossed the Moon's surface. Since any water on the airless Moon's surface vaporizes and behaves like the wind on Earth, the question became, where did this water originate? The vapor cloud eruptions lasted 14 hours and covered an area of some 100 square miles. Prompting Rice University physicists Dr. John Freeman Jr. and Dr. H. Ken Hills to pronounce the event one of the most exciting discoveries yet indicating water within the Moon. The 2 physicists claimed that the water vapor came from deep inside the Moon, apparently released during a moonquake. NASA officials offered a more mundane and questionable explanation. They speculated that 2 tanks on Apollo descent stages containing between 27 and 45 kilograms of water became stressed and ruptured, releasing their contents. Freeman and Hills declined to accept this explanation, pointing out that the 2 tanks from Apollo 12 and 14 were some 180 kilometers apart, yet the water vapor was detected with the same flux at both sites, although the instruments faced in opposite directions. Skeptics also have understandably questioned the odds of 2 separate tanks breaking simultaneously and how such a small quantity of water could produce 100 square miles of vapor. Moon rocks were found to be magnetized, not strong enough to pick up a paperclip, but magnetic nevertheless. Yet there is no magnetic field on the Moon itself. So where did the magnetism come from? The presence of large seas of smooth, solidified molten rock also presented a mystery. These indicate nothing less than a vast outpouring of lava at some distant time. It has now been confirmed that some of the Moon's craters are of internal origin, yet there is no indication that the Moon has ever been hot enough to produce volcanic eruptions. Another puzzle is that almost all 4/5 of the areas are located on the Moon's Earth-side hemisphere. Yet the far side contains many more craters and mountainous areas. Between 1969 and 1977, Apollo mission seismographic equipment registered up to 3,000 moonquakes in each year of operation. Most of the vibrations were quite small and were caused by meteorite strikes or falling booster rockets, but many other quakes were detected deep inside the Moon. This internal creaking is believed to be caused by the gravitational pull of our planet, as most moonquakes occur when the Moon is closest to the Earth. An event occurred in 1958 in the Moon's Alphonsus crater, which shook the idea that all internal moonquake activity is simply settling rocks. In November of that year, astronomer Nikolai A. Kozyrev of the Crimean Astrophysical Observatory startled the scientific world by photographing the first recorded gaseous eruption on the Moon near the crater's peak. Kozyrev attributed this to escaping fluorescent gases. He also detected a reddish glow characteristic of carbon compounds, which seemed to move and disappeared after an hour. Some scientists refused to accept Kozyrev's findings until astronomers at the Lowell Observatory in 1963 saw reddish glows on the crests of ridges in the Aristarchus region. Days later, two separate observatories reported coloured lights on the Moon lasting more than an hour. Something was going on inside the volcanically dead Moon, and whatever it is, it occurs the same way at the same time. It seems apparent that the Moon has a tough, hard outer shell and a light or non-existent interior. The Moon's shell contains dense minerals such as titanium, used on Earth in the construction of aircraft and space vehicles. Many people still recall watching our astronauts on TV as they vainly tried to drill through the crust of a Moon Maria. Their specifically designed drills could only penetrate a few inches. The puzzle of the Moon's hard surface was compounded by the discovery of what appeared to be processed metals. Experts were surprised to find lunar rocks bearing brass, mica, and amphibole, in addition to near-pure titanium, uranium-236 and neptunium-237, elements not previously found in nature, were discovered in Moon rocks, according to the Argonne National Laboratory. Undoubtedly the greatest mystery concerning our Moon is how it came to be there in the first place. Prior to the Apollo missions, one serious theory as to the Moon's origin was that it broke off the Earth eons ago. Although no one could positively locate where on Earth it originated, many speculated that the loss of material explained the huge gouge in the Earth which forms the Pacific Ocean. However, this idea was discarded when it was found that there is little similarity between the composition of our world and that of the Moon. A more recent theory had the Moon created out of space debris left over from the creation of the Earth. This concept proved untenable in light of current gravitational theory, which indicates that one large object will accumulate all loose material, leaving none for the formation of another large body. It is now generally accepted that the Moon originated elsewhere and entered the Earth's gravitational field at some point in the distant past. Here theories diverge. One states that the Moon was originally a planet which collided with the Earth, creating debris which combined to form the Moon, and another states that the Moon, while wandering through our solar system, was captured and pulled into orbit by the Earth's gravity. Neither of these theories is especially compelling because of the lack of evidence that neither the Earth nor the Moon seems to have been physically disrupted by a past close encounter. There is no debris in space indicating a past collision, and it does not appear that the Earth and the Moon developed during the same time period. As for the capture theory, even scientist Isaac Asimov, well known for his works of fiction, wrote, "It's too big to have been captured by the Earth." The chances of such a capture having been effected, and the Moon then having taken up nearly circular orbit around our Earth, are too small to make such an eventuality credible. Asimov was right to consider the Moon's orbit. It is not only nearly a perfect circle, it is stationary, one side always facing the Earth, with only the slightest variation. As far as we know, it's the only natural satellite with such an orbit. This circular orbit is especially odd, considering that the Moon's centre of mass lies more than a mile closer to the Earth than its geometric centre. This fact alone should produce an unstable, wobbly orbit, much as a ball with its mass off-centre will not roll in a straight line. Additionally, almost all of the other satellites in our solar system orbit in the plane of their planet's equator. Not so the Moon, whose orbit lies strangely nearer the Earth's orbit around the Sun, or inclined to the Earth's ecliptic by more than 5 degrees. In July 1970, two Russian scientists, Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Shcherbakov, had an article published in the Soviet journal Sputnik entitled "Is the Moon the Creation of Intelligence?" They advanced the theory that the Moon is not a completely natural world, but a planetoid that was hollowed out eons ago in the far reaches of space, by intelligent beings possessing a technology far superior to ours. Huge machines were used to melt rock and form large cavities within the Moon, spewing the molten refuse onto the surface. Protected by a hull-like inner shell, plus a reconstructed outer shell of metallic rocky junk, this gigantic craft was steered through the cosmos and finally parked in orbit around the Earth. In their article, Vasin and Shcherbakov wrote, "Abandoning the traditional paths of common sense, we have plunged into what may at first sight seem to be unbridled and irresponsible fantasy. But the more minutely we go into all the information gathered by man about the Moon, the more we are convinced that there is not a single fact to rule out our supposition. As outrageous as the spaceship moon theory may first appear, consider how this model reconciles all of the mysteries of the Moon. It would explain why the Moon gives evidence of being much older than the Earth and perhaps even our solar system, and why there are 3 distinct layers within the Moon, with the densest materials in the outside layer, exactly as one would expect of the hull of a spacecraft. It could also explain why no sign of water has been found on the Moon's surface, yet there is evidence that it exists deep inside. To the argument between hot moon and cold moon, scientists, they are both right. The Moon originally was a cold world, which was transformed into a spacecraft by artificially heating and expelling vast quantities of its interior. This theory also could explain the seemingly contradictions over the question of a hollow moon. If the Moon originally was a solid world which was artificially hollowed out, there would be evidence of both phases, exactly what we have with the current Moon knowledge. The circular logic of modern science regarding the origin of the Moon runs something like this. We know that extraterrestrials don't exist, but we do know that the Moon exists and has been mentioned throughout human history. We humans did not create it or place it in Earth's orbit, so it must have been done by extraterrestrials. But since we are told they don't exist, we will simply call it an anomaly.
The Apollo missions, one of which led to Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin's iconic first landing, are some of the most profound accomplishments of mankind. The mission's successes were heralded as a new era for space exploration and a harbinger of our civilization's technological evolution. But there are several strange rumors and questionable transcripts of events that occurred during the missions. which NASA and its astronauts have responded to dismissively. This came to be known as the Apollo 11 conspiracy. While many are still skeptical of the landings, there are other strange reports that have roused conspiracies about unexplained phenomena experienced by Apollo astronauts, including reports of a base on the dark side of the moon. These theories are fueled by transcripts that have only been declassified within the past decade, or from NASA having lost documents and recordings of the original lunar landing. Whether there is any validity to these theories is up for debate, but some are so intriguing that they can't be ignored. What did Neil Armstrong discover on the moon? According to NASA, Armstrong and Aldrin wandered the moon for 3 hours, conducting experiments and collecting moon rocks. They also planted the US flag and a sign to mark their landing, claiming their visit a peaceful mission for all mankind. What's on the dark side of the moon? According to NASA, the dark side of the moon is filled with significantly more craters and less of the smooth, dark mare we normally see. The terrain is rough, chaotic compared to the side we're familiar with, seen in images from NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. However, accounts from former military intelligence officials have claimed that there is more on the dark side of the moon than NASA is letting on. Carl Wolf, a technician at the Air Force Tactical Air Command headquarters in Langley, Virginia, analyzed data from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, claiming he and his colleagues viewed artificial structures on the dark side of the moon, including radar antennas and structures made by intelligent beings. Others have claimed to discover underground tunnels in images captured by India's lunar orbiter. These tunnels on the dark side were likely the product of tubes of lava flow that created a massive system of caves potentially inhabited by living beings. There are a few bizarre accounts of the crew having potentially experienced UFOs and an extraterrestrial presence during the Apollo 11 mission. One of these instances occurred on the last day of approach to the moon, which Aldrin, Armstrong and Michael Collins have recounted. The two astronauts spotted what they, at first, assumed to be a stage of the Saturn V rocket called the SIVB. When they called to Houston to ask if that was the case, Houston told them that the SIVB had been detached a while ago and it was 6,000 miles away. Although Armstrong said it was just far enough away that they couldn't make out the object's shape, the other astronauts debated whether it was shaped like a cylinder or an L-shaped open book. Another strange report claims to be a transcript between Armstrong and Aldrin witnessing the extraterrestrial spacecraft and structures once they exited the lunar module Eagle. The transcript is as follows: Apollo 11, those are giant things. No, this is not an optical illusion. No one is going to believe this. NASA, what? What the hell is happening? What's wrong with you? Apollo 11, they're here under the surface. NASA, what's there? Muffled noise. Emission interrupted. Interference control calling Apollo 11. Apollo 11, we saw some visitors. They were here for a while, observing the instruments. NASA, repeat your last information. Apollo 11, I say there were other spaceships. They're lined up on the other side of the crater. Apollo 11, let us sound this orbiter in 625-5, automatic relay connected. My hands are shaking so badly I can't do anything. Film it? God, if these damn cameras have picked up anything, what then? NASA, have you picked up anything? Apollo 11, I didn't have any film at hand. 3 shots of the saucers or whatever they were that were ruining the film. NASA, control here. Are you on your way? What is the uproar with the UFOs over? Apollo 11, they've landed there. There they are, and they're watching us. NASA, the mirrors, have you set them up? Apollo 11, yes, they're in the right place, but whoever made those spaceships surely can come tomorrow and remove them. Over and out. What makes this exchange seem like it could be fabricated is that the official transcripts between NASA and the Apollo astronauts, NASA is always referred to as Houston, not Mission Control. Although, what is intriguing about this supposed account is that there were 2 minutes of video and radio silence when Armstrong and Aldrin left their lunar module. The cameras and recording that failed were some of the most expensively and highly advanced equipment, which produced reliable recordings throughout the rest of the mission. These 2 minutes were also purportedly censored to civilians on Earth who were tuned in with VHF radio equipment. Neil Armstrong is said to have disclosed his account of what he and Aldrin saw to an unnamed professor during a NASA symposium. "Professor, what really happened out there with Apollo 11? Armstrong: It was incredible. Of course, we had always known there was a possibility. In fact, we were warned off. There was never any questions then of a space station or moon city." "Professor, how do you mean warned off?" Armstrong: "I can't go into details except to say that their ships were far superior to ours, both in size and technology. Boy, they were big and menacing. No, there is no question of a space station." "Professor, but NASA had other missions after Apollo 11. Armstrong: "Naturally, NASA was committed at that time and couldn't risk a panic on Earth, but it really was a quick scoop and back again." Did the astronauts really encounter alien spacecraft or see a base on the dark side of the moon? Is there any legitimacy to these transcripts? While it's difficult to tell whether these conversations actually happened with the anonymous sources and classified information, one thing that stands out is the fact that NASA lost a significant amount of high-quality, slow-scan television footage that was made as a backup for television broadcast. One might ask how the most technologically advanced space program in the world managed to launch a rocket, putting men on the moon, and somehow just misplaced footage of it. During the Apollo 10 mission that was the antecedent to Aldrin and Armstrong's moonwalk, 2 astronauts orbited the moon and reported hearing some odd sounds. While losing contact with Houston on the far side of the moon, a crew of astronauts aboard Apollo 10 reported hearing eerie whistling sounds that they referred to as space music. One astronaut, Eugene Cernan, even speculated as to whether they shouldn't tell Houston what they heard. LMP: "That music even sounds outer spacey, doesn't it? You hear that whistling sound?" CDR: "Yes." LMP: "Woo, say you're..." CMP: "Did you hear that whistling sound too?" LMP: "Yes, sounds like, outer space type music." CMP: "I wonder what it is." LMP: "Hey, Tom, is your installation all burned off here? On the front side of your window over here, right?" CDR: "Yes." LMP: "Mine's all burned off. Isn't that weird? Eerie, John." CMP: "Yes, I got it too. And see who was outside. Boy, that sure is weird music." CMP: "We're going to have to find out about that. Nobody will believe us." LMP: "Yes, it's a whistling, like an outer space type thing." One explanation that tries to shed some scientific light onto what the astronauts may have heard is that it was the product of radio waves interacting with the magnetic field of the moon. A similar sound was picked up and recorded recently by the Cassini spacecraft when it was orbiting Saturn. The only problem is that the moon doesn't have a magnetic field like planets do. The scientific retort was that if it wasn't radio waves reacting with magnetic fields from the moon, then it was simply interference between VHF radios between the 2 Apollo 10 vehicles. But wouldn't the astronauts have experienced that frequency before? These transcripts are among several other accounts of astronauts in the Apollo program experiencing strange phenomena. And while NASA offers seemingly plausible explanations for many of them, there is an underlying perception that the whole story is not being told. With tapes of what's arguably humanity's most important moment being lost, transcripts being classified, and bizarre first-hand accounts from astronauts themselves, it seems that there could be much more to be disclosed. A few years ago, NASA destroyed hundreds of Apollo-era tapes found in the basement of a deceased Pennsylvania man's home. 2 massive computers were also found in the basement, though NASA claimed the serial number imprinted on them didn't match anything on its records. A NASA FOIA request. In response to a FOIA request from Motherboard, NASA's Office of Inspector General released a report detailing an investigation into a trove of data reels found in the basement of a former IBM engineer. The engineer, whose name was redacted in the report, had worked as a NASA contractor and was given permission to take the tapes as well as 2 large computers sometime between 1968 and 1972. According to his widow, the IBM center in Pittsburgh gave him permission to take the materials. The man's widow expressly stated, "Please tell NASA these items were not stolen." Upon receiving custody of the tapes, a NASA inspector decided that there was no use for them, as they were moderately to severely damaged by mold. The tapes, many of which were unlabeled, appeared to be from the Pioneer and Helios missions. The Pioneer missions sent probes to study Jupiter and Saturn, while Helios probes were sent to study the Sun. The inspector broke down the number of reels per mission. PN8, Pioneer 8, 1 reel. PN9, Pioneer 9, 2 reels. PN10, Pioneer 10, 40 reels. PN11, Pioneer 11, 53 reels. HEL 1 or HEL A, Helios 1, 10 reels. HESA, possibly an abbreviation for Helios A, 2 reels. Intelsat 4, 2 reels. NASA destroys tapes. The labeled reels accounted for just over 100 of the 325 tapes. After conferring with NASA's archive department, the inspector deemed them historically insignificant and recommended they be destroyed. But the correspondence between the inspector and his NASA colleagues revealed some strange findings that were left unexplained. One discrepancy was found with a tape seeming to be labeled from the Pioneer 11 mission, which launched in 1973. However, the date on the tape was marked 1972. The computers found in the basement presented another enigma, as they were incredibly heavy and labeled with a contract serial number that NASA had no record of ever having. The numbers read NAS5 2154 and NAS5 176205, initially bringing up a contract number for an HVAC system. Even stranger, the contract duration for one of the computers found in the NASA archives was from 2003 to 2004 for a computer number inscription from 1962. This quandary led one NASA employee to state, "It really feels like archaeology to me." NASA said that it had no use for the computers and they could be used for scrap or disposed of by whatever means. The computers themselves were said to be extraordinarily heavy, likely requiring a crane to move them, yet somehow they ended up in the basement of this man's house. Though these tapes are unrelated to the Apollo missions, they are relevant when considering NASA's archival preservation methods at the time. One would be remiss not to remember the degaussing or erasing of over 200,000 magnetic tapes, in which one with the original footage of the moon landing in 1969 was lost. Motherboard pointed out that NASA's abysmal archival process has been known and chastised by the government in the past. For the Pioneer 10 and 11 missions contained in this recent trove of basement tapes, only 30 to 59% of the mission data was archived at the Goddard National Space Science Data Center. NASA considers this to be a good level of documentation. Motherboard confirmed that the tapes were disposed of and recycled by NASA. It will remain a mystery as to what exactly was contained on the tapes, though NASA employees say they were likely blank. It is surprising, however, that NASA would allow a private contractor to take home that many magnetic data reels when it was making such an effort to save money by erasing and recycling them, including the one containing the moon landing. Was this unnamed engineer who held onto the tapes for over 40 years really just a collector? Another set of mysterious fast radio bursts, FRBs, from a distant galaxy were recorded by astronomers at the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Management Experiment, CHIME, in British Columbia. Scientists are still unsure of the source of these strange bursts, though one potential explanation posits that they may be the product of an advanced alien civilization. The latent bursts are the first recorded from this source since it was accidentally discovered in 2007. Astronomers remained baffled by this latest recording, which details signals at a significantly lower frequency than their first discovery. Initial frequencies clocked in at 1400 MHz, but the latest bursts came in at around 400 MHz, the lowest possible frequency their instruments could detect. Is this potential alien civilization sending signals at varying ranges to increase its chances of being heard? If so, it seems we're picking up all of them. Their latest discovery was published in the journal Nature. Though they were first discovered in 2007, speculation around the FRB's origin didn't captivate headlines as much as it did in 2017 when Professor Alvy Loeb of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics published a paper suggesting the alien possibility. Fast radio bursts are exceedingly bright given their short duration and origin at great distances, and we haven't identified a possible natural source with any confidence, Loeb said. An artificial origin is worth contemplating and checking. There are two competing theories on the extraterrestrial potential, the first being that a civilization is transmitting their calling card in hopes of contacting another civilization like ourselves. The other possibility is that the bursts are propelling the sails of alien probes in deep space, a type of technology the Breakthrough Initiative is currently attempting to develop. Astronomers notice that whatever the source of these waves may be, it's scattering the radio bursts, meaning it must be a massive object with special characteristics. That could mean in some sort of dense clump like a supernova, remnant, or the near central black hole in a galaxy, said a team member in the study from the University of Toronto. But it has to be in some special place to give us all the scattering that we see. In the event that these bursts are coming from an alien megastructure, their source would likely have to be at least the size of a planet, unless they're being emitted by some technology we can't yet fathom. This would surely put the civilization beyond level 1 on the Kardashev scale, a level in which they have been able to harness all the energy of their home planet. We, on the other hand, have yet to reach such advancement. Could this latest discovery mean that we're on the precipice of making contact with an advanced extraterrestrial civilization? It might be time to start building an intergalactic radio broadcaster of our own. Some years ago, in 1988, the USSR, as it was then, sent 2 robot spacecraft on a mission to Mars, specifically to examine the twin moons Phobos and Deimos that hang in the skies above it. It was called the Phobos program, and what it may have had revealed was very strange indeed. The first probe, Phobos 1, was launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome on the 7th of July 1988. At the time, it was the heaviest space vehicle ever launched, and at first all went well with the spacecraft operating as it should, until on the 2nd of September 1988, planned contact with the vehicle did not occur as expected. This was due to a faulty software upload that had accidentally deactivated the vehicle's thrusters, and it couldn't align itself to allow its solar cells to charge the batteries, so they went flat and the probe fell silent and contact was permanently lost. However, on July the 12th, 1988, the Phobos 2 probe was launched and it performed faultlessly, entering orbit around the red planet and in January 1989, and gathered data about the Sun, Phobos and Mars, sending back 37 images as it did so. 2 of these images were unexplained. One showed what appeared to be a UFO sitting on the Martian surface, while the other showed an anomaly that looked like a monolith located on the surface of Phobos. Although the probe continued operating as it should, on March 28, 1989, an elliptical shadow was seen on the surface of Phobos, then an object was detected moving rapidly towards it. This image has since been interpreted as a cylindrical spacecraft around 20 kilometers in length and 1.5 kilometers wide, and it is thought that this is what created the shadow. A few seconds after the object was seen, the systems aboard the satellite failed and it began spinning out of control, which caused the watching scientists to speculate that something had either struck or deliberately shot at the probe. This object was the last image that the probe sent back to Earth. It was further stated that the photos could not be an illusion because the object was captured by 2 separate cameras as well as cameras taking infrared images. For several hours, scientists tried to re-establish contact with the damaged craft, but could not do so, and the scientists said that Phobos 2 had been destroyed. It is relevant that the last 3 images that Phobos 2 sent back to Earth have never been officially released into the public domain. Later the same day, the official Soviet news agency TASS blandly stated that, after completing an operation yesterday around the Martian moon Phobos, the probe failed to communicate with Earth as scheduled. Scientists at Mission Control have been unable to re-establish radio contact. Because of the ongoing political and technical rivalry between the USSR and the USA was at fever pitch, so unsurprisingly, those in charge of the project tried to cover up what had occurred. But news concentrating the anomalous sighting and the subsequent probe failure eventually leaked out. Although an image was eventually released, it's not clear which one in the sequence it is, and a few Soviet scientists have come forward to supply any information or conclusive mission data which would help clarify this. It is reported that the final images were shown to a private meeting between UK and US scientists, and the 19th of October 1989 issue of Nature carried technical reports on the experiments that Phobos 2 did manage to conduct. This report comprised 37 pages, but one paragraph mentions the loss of the probe. The report confirms that the spacecraft was spinning, either because of a computer malfunction or because Phobos 2 was struck by an unknown object. From this, it seems that it is not only NASA that apparently suppresses inconvenient or anomalous images and events, but the Russian space agency does so as well. There is considerable speculation that the monolith on Phobos is not just a random lump of rock, but is a structure of some kind. It has long been theorized that Mars, and especially its moon Phobos, may serve as home to various races of extraterrestrials, and that the unnatural shapes and apparent structures that cover the surface of Mars, such as the pyramids, square buildings, runways, etc., demonstrate this. As far as Phobos is concerned, as we have seen, it has been argued that the moon is in fact hollow and acts as a kind of space station and staging point for extraterrestrials as they travel through the solar system and perhaps as they visit Earth. The claims that Phobos is artificial are based on such facts as Phobos is at such a low orbit around Mars that it should fall out of orbit and crash onto the surface, and that it changes its speeds as it orbits. It accelerates and slows down, which should be impossible unless it has its own propulsion system. A noted member of the Soviet Academy of Science, Joseph Shklovsky, who cooperated with the late Dr. Carl Sagan in writing Intelligent Life in the Universe, once calculated from the estimated density of the Martian atmosphere and the anomalous manner in which Phobos moved that the satellite must be hollow. Another explanation, Dr. Yisrael Spinoza from the University of Arizona's Lunar and Planetary Laboratory Department, stated that the monolith is a completely natural phenomenon and that you would find others like it here on Earth. He said, "There are lots of rectangular boulders on Earth and Mars and other planets. Layering from rock deposition combined with tectonic fractures creates right-angle planes of weakness such that rectangular blocks tend to weather out and separate from the bedrock." In all fairness, he might be right, but the way in which the object is shaped is more likely to be artificial than natural. So once again, who put it there and why? One image that does appear to corroborate the earlier Russian Phobos 2 pictures comes from the NASA-launched Mars Global Surveyor, which shows what appears to be an artificial monolith on Phobos. This is a white, rectangular, box-type structure that resembles the enigmatic monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it seems to have been deliberately placed there. If this is the case, what does it tell us? Does it hint at the possibility that, like many writers of speculative fiction, Arthur C. Clarke, the visionary writer of a short story called The Sentinel, which served as the inspiration for the groundbreaking film masterpiece 2001: A Space Odyssey, may have had an unwitting contact with extraterrestrial intelligences attempting to pass a message to the human race? It is possible that the monolith that has been found on Phobos might be a portal, a physical stargate allowing travel to other galaxies. If so, that might imply that what has been found on the Martian surface are artifacts left behind by the same race that placed the monolith on Phobos and used it to leave Mars when it became uninhabitable. This anomalous object has caused so much interest and speculation that Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, is on record as saying we should visit the moons of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once every 7 hours. When people find out about it, what are they going to say? Who put that there? Who put that there? As if this was not strange enough, there is a remarkably similar monolith on the surface of Mars itself, and as with the monolith on Phobos, it strongly resembles the monolith Stargate from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Intriguingly, the premise behind Clarke's The Sentinel and the later film 2001: A Space Odyssey was that we had been left these monoliths as beacons from beings that created the human race. They had been placed on the Earth and the Moon, with a final one hanging in space off Jupiter, and were designed to transmit a signal into the void, telling to their creators, telling that we, children, or perhaps experiment might be a better description, had been successful in their journey into space and had found them all. It was the final beacon that was the real Stargate, that allowed its finder to travel the vast distances of interstellar space to become something more than human, something truly wonderful. Once again on the Martian surface, there are alleged signs of another anomalous structure that is triangular and inside a crater, and some observers claim that, although a little bit dented, it may be a crashed UFO. The dents would almost certainly have been made when it crashed. There are precedents for this based on the many sightings of triangular UFOs that appear here on the Earth. Another image taken by the Phobos mission is an infrared scan taken of another location on the Martian surface that showed clearly defined rectangular areas. These are part of a network of straight channels that resemble the layout of a city block. These did not correspond to anything on the surface, so this heat signature indicates the presence of a number of underground caverns or tunnels that are too regular and geometric to be natural. One observer from the London Science Museum said that the city-like pattern is 60 kilometers wide and could easily be mistaken for an aerial view of Los Angeles. All mysteries tied up in enigmas, and sadly the truth of what lies there, if it is actually released, will not emerge until the human race has actually visited our celestial neighbours Mars to see for ourselves what lies there. The various missions are triumphs of technology, but they cannot replace human beings. Will the truth ever be known? Perhaps this is best described in a quotation for the late British wartime leader Winston Churchill, when he said about Russian foreign policy, "It is a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma, but perhaps there is a key. That key is Russian national interest." Perhaps we should modify that slightly and remove the phrase Russian national interest and replace it with various interested parties on planet Earth, because it is almost certain that unless military and civilian interests are met, we are unlikely to ever learn the truth. Since it's now common knowledge that NASA airbrushed out anomalies and manipulated their photographs taken on the Moon and in space to keep up the pretense that there's nothing of interest on our nearest celestial neighbor, it stands to reason that those brave astronauts taking the pictures must have seen whatever it is that scares the proverbial pants off the space agency. You don't have to stretch your imagination too far to accept that the rush to the Moon may have been prompted by America's need to investigate the lunar anomalies. In fact, it may have been the one overwhelming reason why billions of taxpayers' dollars were thrown at the Apollo program. What must it have been like for those who walked on the Moon to stand in front of these truly massive structures and yet not be able to tell the truth to the masses here on Earth, who idolize them and hang on their every word? Then again, maybe they did, and we just didn't realize it. In an interview given to Saga magazine, NASA's Farouk El-Baz, the man who helped train the astronauts and select the lunar landing sites, and Joseph Goudevage discussed a curious incident which took place during Apollo 16, when John Young and Charles Duke made an unexpected detour when returning to the LEM, the Lunar Excursion Module, in the Moon rover, after investigating a mysterious color change in the subsurface dirt near the Flag and Buster craters. Capcom: "Okay, just a question for you, John. When you got halfway, we understand you looped around south. Is that right?" Young: "That is a firm. We came upon Barbara." What do you suppose Young meant when he said they came upon Barbara? Gudovich asked. Elbaz: I can't really say. Code perhaps? Saga: but Barbara is an odd name for something on the moon, isn't it? Elbaz: yes, an enigma. As I suggested, perhaps a code, but I don't really know. Elbaz then went on to admit that NASA were looking for something which he wouldn't elaborate on, and discussed a bridge-like structure they had discovered in Mare Crisium, but later got very agitated and backtracked when pushed on the question of artificial moon-based structures. Elbaz: No, I'm not admitting such a thing, but when you start to think about it, almost anything is possible. There's almost no limits to how you can interpret the many things astronomers have been observing and reporting for several centuries. Now the astronauts are seeing many anomalies close up. Farouk Elbaz isn't the only one to hint that the moon is a far more enigmatic and mysterious place than we have ever been led to believe. In 1969, former chief of NASA Communication Systems, Maurice Chatelain, claimed that Neil Armstrong, the first man to set foot on the moon, reported to Houston that he could see two saucer-shaped craft sitting on the rim of a nearby crater from the LEM window. This was confirmed by Christopher Kraft, NASA's first flight director, who watched the dramatic landing of Apollo 11 and Armstrong's hesitant first steps onto the moon from the comfort of Houston's mission control. Another NASA scientist, Otto Binder, also claimed that the story was not only true, but that the conversation was heard by Soviet scientists, such as Dr. Vladimir Zazar, Dr. Alexandra Kazantsev, as well as hundreds of amateur ham radio enthusiasts. Then, on the 21st of March 1996, scientists and engineers who had participated in the exploration of the Moon and Mars reported the alarming results of their discoveries at a briefing held at the Washington National Press Club. In front of an astonished audience, it was claimed that NASA had discovered man-made or artificial structures in at least 44 regions of the Moon. Although it has now come to light that none of the Apollo missions truly passed without incident, there are a few missions where the astronauts were so taken aback by what they were seeing that procedure went out of the window, and they seem to have blurted out what they were laying eyes on in front of a live audience listening eagerly back on Earth. This seems to have happened more during the last 3 Apollo missions. Apollo 15, David Scott, Alfred Worden, James Irwin, 26th of July, 7th of August, 1971, the Apennine Mountains. During this mission, Command Module pilot Alfred Worden found himself alone orbiting the Moon at a height of 100 kilometers, while he studied the lunar surface with an array of state-of-the-art equipment, including a gamma-ray spectrometer. Meanwhile, below in the Palus Putenis, the Marsh of Decay region, both Scott and Irwin came across a set of uniform tracks that ran down a slope and out of sight. Irwin: tracks. Here, as we go down the slope. Mission Control: just follow the tracks, huh? Irwin: right, we're garbled. We know that it's a fairly good one. We're bearing 320, hitting range for 413. I can't get over their lineations, that layering on Mount Hadley. Scott: I can't either. That's really spectacular. Irwin: they sure look beautiful. Scott: talk about organization. Irwin: that's the most organized structure I've ever seen. Scott: it's garbled, so uniform in width. Irwin: nothing we've seen before this has shown such uniform thickness from the top of the track to the bottom. We can only ponder on what the 2 astronauts found when they followed the tracks around the edge of the slope, but it's clear from the excited tones of their voices that it came out of the blue and was totally unexpected. It's also worth noting that Harrison Schmitt of Apollo 17 also reported to Houston that he could see similar tracks in Taurus Littrow, at which point he was told to go to Bravo Whiskey Whiskey Romeo, evidence of more code words or perhaps a secret radio band on which prying ears here on Earth couldn't listen into. Apollo 16, Charles Duke, Thomas Mattingly, John Young, 16th of April, 27th of April 1972, Descartes Highlands. After landing, Charlie Duke could hardly believe his eyes when he looked out of the LEM window and saw a blue glass-like structure reflecting sunlight not so far away on the horizon. Unsurprisingly, both Young and Duke were sent to investigate. It is now that Charlie Duke appears to give us a first-hand description of a lunar complex or city, complete with smoky blue glass domes and funnels. Duke, we felt it under our feet. It's a soft spot, firmer where we stand. I tell you one thing, if this place had air in it, it sure would be beautiful. It's beautiful without air. The scenery up on top of Stone Mountain. You would have to be here to see this to believe it. Those domes are incredible. MC, okay, could you take a look at that smoky area there and see what you can see on the face? Duke, beyond the domes, the structure goes almost into the ravine that I described, and one goes to the top. In the northeast wall of the ravine, you can't see the delineation. To the northeast, there are tunnels. To the north, they're dipping east to about 30 degrees. Apollo 17, Eugene Cernan, Ronald Evans, Harrison Schmitt, 7th of December, 19th of December 1972, Taurus Littrow. Although there is more evidence of tampering among the photographs taken on this mission by Cernan and Schmitt than any of the previous missions, it is to Ronald Evans alone in the Command Service module who we must turn to for more evidence of the amazing structures on the Moon. As Evans peered down at the Moon rushing by below him, the CSM began to pass over the 600-mile-wide bullseye-looking ringed crater known as the Mare Orientale, Eastern Sea, when he noticed something large that was reflecting light. After reporting his sighting, Mission Control in Houston asked him a very strange question. Do you think it could be Vostok? Vostok was the first of the manned Soviet Earth orbiters, one of which took the first man, Yuri Gagarin, into orbit on the 12th of April 1961. The Vostok orbiters never left Earth orbit, and any member of Mission Control worth their salt would know that, so one can only ask, what were they referring to? Is it an interesting coincidence, perhaps, that the Russian Antarctic Research Station, an artificial environment built to withstand the worst weather that Mother Earth can throw at it, is also named Vostok? Could the Russians be secretly using the same system on the Moon? It is clear that Vostok was a code word which is supported by the fact that Capcom immediately ordered him to switch channels to Kilo Kilo, so he could give a better description of what he was looking at. Another Moon instance that shows that not only were code words used, but also that astronauts sent to the Moon were specifically told before they left Earth what to look out for, comes several orbits later, when Evans was zipping across the southern lunar skies over the 2,500-kilometer wide and 13-kilometer-deep Mare Aitken. Evans: Okay, Robert Parker on Capcom, I guess the big thing I want to report from the backside is that I look at the cloverleaf in Aitken with the binoculars and that southern dome garble to the east. MC, we copy that, Ron. Is there any difference in the color of the dome and the Mare Aitken there? Evans: Yes, there is. The Condor, Condorcet, Condorcet, or whatever you call it there, Condorcet Hotel, is the one that's got the diamond-shaped fill down in the floor. MC: Understand. Condorcet. Evans: Condor, Condorcet, Condorcet Alpha. They've either caught a landslide on it or it's got, and it doesn't look like, garble in the other side of the wall in the northwest side. MC: Okay, we copy that. Northwest wall of Condorcet. Evans: The area is oval or elliptical in shape. Of course, the ellipse is toward the top. This interesting but admittedly confusing conversation seems to show that even the command module pilots left alone to orbit the Moon were actively searching out and describing objects that they were asked to seek out. We can only imagine what the Condorcet looks like, but one thing is for sure, If it's been there a day, it's been there an awful long time. When you consider the marvels that the heroic moonwalkers may have seen, you can't help but wonder why they don't come forward and reveal all. Death threats? Bribes, perhaps? Maybe they have somehow had their minds erased, either entirely or partially, removing their memories of what they walked amongst and cast eyes on while on the moon. It is a fact that once the ticker-tape parades and all the platitudes ended, some of the astronauts' lives simply fell apart around them. Buzz Aldrin has well-publicized drinking problems, and the ever-cool, calm and collected Neil Armstrong became a recluse and vanished from the public eye. The outspoken and controversial Dr. Edgar Mitchell of Apollo 14 has often bemoaned how he can't remember much of what he accomplished while wandering the plains of Fra Mauro. And perhaps the most likable of the Apollo astronauts, Alan Bean, spends all his time painting incredibly beautiful pictures of astronauts walking on the moon. Perhaps he finds it therapeutic. On Wednesday, the 20th of July 1994, the elusive Neil Armstrong broke cover to give a speech to students at the White House to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Apollo 11 landing on the moon. Struggling to hold back tears of emotion, Neil gave a rather cryptic speech in which he hints that he remembers more about his time of the Sea of Tranquility than he should. Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of the truth's protective layers. We find it strangely ironic that as India, Russia, Japan and China go to the moon, President Obama's policies have all but killed off the dreams of an American, adding to the array of footprints that remain in such outposts as Hadley Reel, the Taurus Littrow Valley and the Descartes Highlands, unaltered and as pristine and crisp as the day they were made nearly 40 years ago. Whatever the nationality of the next moonwalker, we can only hope that the truth's protective layers mentioned so eloquently by Neil Armstrong will be removed, so we can all revel in the truth. It is our right, and maybe, just maybe, our heritage.
Phobos, one of the two moons of Mars, has itself always been considered a rather mysterious object, as has its smaller twin, Deimos. Josef Shklovsky, a noted member of the Soviet Academy of Science, and co-writer with the famous Dr. Carl Sagan of Intelligent Life in the Universe, once calculated from the estimated density of the Martian atmosphere and the peculiar acceleration of Phobos that the satellite must be hollow. Could Phobos be a hollowed-out space station of huge proportions? The question, as you will find out, is not so far from reality as you might first think. In July 1988, the Russians sent two unmanned satellite probes called Phobos 1 and Phobos 2 in the direction of Mars, with the primary intention of investigating the planet's mysterious moon, Phobos. The first probe, Phobos 1, was unfortunately lost en route 2 months earlier, reportedly because of a radio command error. Phobos 2 was also ultimately then lost in the most intriguing circumstances, but not before it had beamed back certain images and information from the planet Mars itself. Phobos 2 arrived safely at Mars in January 1989 and entered into orbit around Mars as the first step at its destination towards its ultimate goal, to transfer to an orbit that would make it fly almost in tandem with the Martian moon called Phobos, hence the spacecraft's name. All went well until the probe aligned itself with Phobos, the Martian moon. Then on the 28th of March 1989, the Soviet Mission Control Center acknowledged sudden communication problems with the spacecraft, and TASS, the official Soviet news agency, responded that Phobos 2 failed to communicate with Earth as scheduled after completing an operation yesterday around the Martian moon Phobos. Scientists at Mission Control have been unable to establish stable radio contact. What had caused the Phobos 2 spacecraft to be lost? The answer came about 3 months later. Pressed by their international participants in the Phobos missions to provide more definitive data, the Soviet authorities released the taped television transmission Phobos 2 sent in its last moments, except for the last frames, taken just seconds before the spacecraft fell silent. The television clip was shown by some TV stations in Europe and Canada as part of weekly diary programs, as a curiosity and not as a hot news item. The television sequence thus released focused on two anomalies. The first was a network of straight lines in the area of the Martian equator. Some of the lines were short, some longer, some thin, some wide enough to look like rectangular shapes embossed in the Martian surface. Arranged, narrow lines parallel to each other, the pattern covered an area of some 600 square kilometers, more than 230 square miles. The anomaly appeared to be far from a natural phenomenon. The television clip was accompanied by a live comment by Dr. John Becklake of the London Science Museum. He described the phenomenon as very puzzling because the pattern seen on the surface of Mars was photographed not with the spacecraft's optical camera, but with its infrared camera, a camera that takes pictures of objects using the heat they radiate, and not by the play of light and shadow on them. In other words, the pattern of parallel lines and rectangles covering an area of almost 250 square miles was a source of heat radiation. It is highly unlikely that a natural source of heat radiation, a geyser or a concentration of radioactive minerals under the surface, for example, would create such a perfect geometric pattern. When viewed over and over again, the pattern definitely looks artificial, but as for what it was, the scientist said, "I certainly don't know." According to Boris Belitsky, science correspondent for Radio Moscow, just before contact was lost with Phobos 2, several unusual images were radioed back to Earth, described by the Russian as quite remarkable features. A report taken from New Scientist of 8th of April 1989 describes the following. The features are either on the Martian surface or in the lower atmosphere. The features are between 20 and 25 kilometers wide and do not resemble any known geological formation. They are spindle-shaped and proving to be intriguing and puzzling. Since no coordinates for the precise location of this anomalous feature have been released publicly, it is impossible to judge its feature on the surface of Mars that can be seen in Mariner 9, frame 4209-75. It is also located in the equatorial area at longitude 186.4 and has been described as unusual indentations with radial arms protruding from a central hub, caused, according to NASA scientists, by the melting and collapse of permafrost layers. The design of the features bringing to mind the structure of a modern airport, with a circular hub from which the long structures housing the airplane gates radiate can be better visualized when the photograph is reversed, showing depressions as protrusions. A shadow across the surface of Mars. An unusual photo of a thin shadow across Mars was shown on the Russian television segment. Seen on the surface of Mars was a clearly defined dark shape that could indeed be described, as it was in the initial dispatch from Moscow, as a thin ellipse. It was certainly different from the shadow of Phobos, recorded 18 years earlier by Mariner 9. The latter cast a shadow that was a rounded ellipse and fuzzy at the edges, as would be cast by the uneven close-up view of Phobos, showing the grooved and cratered surface. The anomaly seen in the Phobos 2 transmission was a thin ellipse with very sharp rather than rounded points. The shape is known in the diamond trade as marquise, and the edges, rather than being fuzzy, stood out sharply against a kind of halo on the Martian surface. Dr. Becklake described it as something that is between the spacecraft and Mars, because we can see the Martian surface below it, and stressed that the object was seen both by the optical and the infrared heat-seeking camera. All these reasons explain why the Soviets have not suggested that the dark, thin ellipse might have been the shadow of the Moon. While the image was held on the screen, Dr. Becklake explained that it was taken as the spacecraft was aligning itself with Phobos, the Moon. As the last picture was halfway through, he said they, the Soviets, saw something which should not be there. The Soviets, he went on to state, have not yet released this last picture, and we won't speculate on what it shows. So what was it that collided or crashed into Phobos 2? Was the space probe shot out of space for seeing too much? What does the last secret frame show? In his careful words to Aviation Week and Space Technology, the chairman of the Soviet equivalent of NASA referred to that last frame, saying, "One image appears to include an odd-shaped object between the spacecraft and Mars." The highly secret photo was later given to the Western press by Colonel Dr. Marina Popovich, a Russian astronaut and pilot who has long been interested in UFOs. At a UFO conference in 1991, Popovich gave to certain investigators some interesting information that she smuggled out of the now ex-Soviet Union. Part of the information was what has been called the first ever leaked account of an alien mothership in the solar system. The last transmission from Phobos 2 was a photograph of a gigantic cylindrical spaceship, a huge, approximately 20 kilometers long, 1.5 kilometers diameter cigar-shaped mothership that was photographed on the 25th of March 1989 hanging or parked next to the Martian moon Phobos by the Soviet unmanned probe Phobos 2. After the last frame was radio transmitted back to Earth, the probe mysteriously disappeared. According to the Russians, it was destroyed, possibly knocked out with an energy pulse beam. The cigar-shaped craft in the penultimate frame, taken by Phobos 2, is apparently the object casting the oblong shadow on the surface of Mars in the earlier photo. Australian science writer Arian Crowley says that because of the convex cat's-eye shadow, which because the overhead solar inclination prevented shadow casting by Martian surface features, implies a shadow thrown on the surface by something in orbit beyond the orbit of Phobos 2 itself. The shadow spindle, or cigar-shaped, is inconsistent with any possible shadow cast by the moon Phobos, which is an irregular potato shape. One needs little imagination to postulate a giant hovering cigar-shaped mothercraft similar to those documented down the years by UFO investigators. Another Phobos picture, released on Canadian TV, presents an infrared scan radiometer image of the Martian surface that showed clearly defined rectangular areas. These were interconnected, with a set of perfectly straight channels much resembling a city block. There were no corresponding surface features taken by regular cameras. This suggests the heat signature of what may be a set of underground caverns and channels that are just too geometrically regular to be formed naturally. According to Dr. John Becklake of the London Science Museum, the city-like pattern is 60 kilometers wide and could easily be mistaken for an aerial view of Los Angeles. Could there be an underground base on the small Martian moon? Is Phobos just an engineered asteroid, superheated and then, like a glass blower's blowglass, the moon inflated? Just who or what is occupying Mars and its planets? We are still no closer to finding those answers.
In 1977, a British television programme titled Science Report, Alternative 3, part of an Anglia TV documentary series, aired and planted the seed of fear about alien invasion in society at large. The program focuses on the disappearances of prominent scientists, engineers and astronomers. The speculation is that the Earth is collapsing and will soon be unable to support human life. So these people have been taken by several governments acting together in an intergovernmental secret space program, SSP, with the goal of developing colonies on other planets, using the moon as a way station. If you ever have chance to view the program, it is so convincing that you will want to volunteer for the SSP, pack up your family and head for Mars. However, there is only one known copy. It is in the possession of Alternative 3's director. It is thought to be fading and grainy due to the passage of time. All other copies of the program were destroyed, and any paperwork referencing the show as if the program never existed. Although the TV program aired in the June of 1977, the producers claimed it was originally intended to be on air on April Fool's Day. Workers in the industry were striking, so the air date was postponed. When it did air, the reaction of viewers was reminiscent of the 1938 radio broadcast by Orson Welles of the War of the Worlds, which created civil unrest and havoc. The broadcast was meant to be a joke, but thousands of people in the US thought that the Earth was being invaded by Martians. They hit the streets in panic, not knowing what to do next or how to escape. The program was so disturbing it was only shown once in England and once in Australia. The US refused to air the program. It was never shown anywhere again. Even though the directors and producers of Alternative 3 were adamant that it was fiction, questions still abound. Is there some truth to the Alternative 3 theory? Are there 3 alternatives for Earth inhabitants in case there is a catastrophic event that threatens the habitability of the planet? Thousands of people disappear every year, never to be heard from again. Could these people have been abducted to develop a breakaway civilization on the Moon or another planet, like Mars? Cosmic Disclosure takes an in-depth look at this fascinating subject. Fact or fiction? Immediately after it aired, the producers of the program announced it had been fiction. The slot where Alternative 3 aired was one that routinely ran documentary episodes. The title of the series was Science Reports, and Alternative 3 was the title of just one segment. It was the last program of the season of the Science Reports. The program was created by reputable reporters and researchers who were well respected for their documentaries. Why would they risk their reputation by airing such a hoax? Was it really a hoax, or was it a disguised message to the public about a secret space program? A book with the same title, Alternative 3, was subsequently written by Leslie Watkins. It presented some of the theories of the alleged hoax as truth. The book and the television program promoted the idea that astronauts had landed on Mars in 1962 in a joint US-USSR effort and definitely identified intelligent extraterrestrial life. It also promoted the idea that climate change was just one thing that could soon make the Earth uninhabitable. Dr. Carl Gerstein, fictional physicist. Dr. Gerstein was a role played by an actor on the Alternative 3 broadcast. In the program, he is a climate change physicist who predicts there will be changes so severe that people on Earth will need to find a new place to live. The actor said he did not rehearse any of his lines because he wanted them to come across as true. His findings came across to some as a veiled warning. His 3 alternatives were: 1. Fix it. Blast a hole in the ozone layer, which would cause the death of many people and result in a reduction of the population. 2. Mitigate it. Construct underground shelters for protection of the elite, including government officials and those deemed important enough to save until the danger was over and they could resurface. 3. Survive it. Build civilizations on Mars with a way station on the Moon. The program concluded that options 1 and 2 were not viable. Therefore, building off-planet breakaway civilizations on Mars was the only option. Alternative 3, a warning. Olaf Phillips, a researcher and writer who focuses on the SSP, believes Alternative 3 was the most dangerous television program in the world. He also equates that the 3 alternatives presented in the television program with what he believes is really happening in the world today. He believes there is evidence that all 3 alternatives have either been explored or are currently under exploration. Number 1. Fix it. Phillips points to several scientific testings that have been conducted in an attempt to modify the atmosphere. In 1958, Operation Argus was an attempt to manipulate the radiation belts. There is evidence that the government is still trying to manipulate the atmosphere to make it safer for mankind. All attempts to change the atmosphere have been failures, which means the focus likely moved to Alternative 2. 2. Mitigate it. There is evidence that this is happening right now. The Nordic Seed Vault is a storage facility for original, non-modified seeds of all foods. Other such vaults are either planned or are in progress around the world. There are known underground shelters in many locations in the US, France, the United Kingdom, Norway, and other countries. More shelters are planned, which points to the problem with this alternative. They cannot be built large enough or fast enough to accommodate the number of people that would need protection. Number 3. Survive it. Although the proof for Alternative 3 does not compare to Alternatives 1 and 2, Phillips believes there is a 50-year government conspiracy that has been hiding space exploration and advanced technology. This has allowed travel to the Moon and Mars where colonies already exist. Phillips references former President Eisenhower, who discussed the military-industrial complex, inferring space exploration was part of this. Astronaut Buzz Aldrin reported seeing a man-made monolith on one of Mars' moons. Philip also discusses breakaway civilizations that some whistleblowers of the SSP have recently revealed their experiences traveling by teleportation to the Moon and Mars. They tell credible stories about their experiences living and working in those places, including living in colonies that were built and developed many years ago. The Alternative 3 and Secret Space Program connection. Consider the advances in technology we experience every day when we use the internet and smartphones, modern security measures for our homes that are activated remotely, and more. Is it reasonable to believe that similar advancements have been made in space travel, so that traveling to the Moon and Mars in a short amount of time by teleporting through portals could easily be a reality? The Earth is being polluted. Glaciers are melting and the results can be catastrophic. Planet X is on collision course with Earth. The Earth is becoming overpopulated and there may not be enough resources available to sustain the planet. According to David Paulide's Missing 411 books, thousands of people disappear each year in the United States and beyond. Could they be plucked away by the SSP to be workers in the breakaway civilizations on the Moon and Mars? Our government, along with other countries, may be working on Alternative 3, developing breakaway civilizations on the Moon and Mars. This will make it possible for masses of people to be transported off-planet as the only way to save their lives and humanity. Watch Deep Space Episode 7 inside the program to learn more. Since the birth of the space agency, there have been reports of UFOs by astronauts. Thousands of videos have been released by NASA showing strange craft, not only in close proximity to our orbiting space stations, but also from the Space Shuttle and even the Apollo missions to the Moon. As to what these objects represent remains a mystery. Clearly, it would seem that another intelligence is monitoring our every move. Major Gordon Cooper was the last known man to fly in space on his own on the 15th of May 1963. Was he alone? According to Major Cooper, he could see a glowing, greenish object ahead of him in the distance and was quickly approaching his capsule. The UFO was real and solid because it was picked up by the Munchies tracking radar. Major Cooper's sighting was reported to the National Broadcast Company, which was covering the flight. But when Major Cooper landed, reporters were told that they would not be allowed to question him about the UFO sighting. If you listen to the John Glenn transmission whilst he was on his Mercury Friendship 7 spacecraft flight in orbit, he reported seeing a big mass of some very small particles that are brilliantly lit up like they're luminescent. He said, "I never saw anything like it. They're round a little, they're coming up by the capsule, and they look like little stars, a whole shower of them coming by." At one point, all these objects were flying side by side with him, and then they would suddenly turn and go the opposite way. John Glenn was trying on numerous occasions to relay that to NASA, who continued to listen but not acknowledge what he was saying for quite some time. Upon the official investigation by NASA scientists, they tried to say that all the particles were actually coming from the spacecraft, but John Glenn took photographs. Once again, after NASA scientists had analyzed these photographs, they explained that they were ice particles captured by the sun. Needless to say, John Glenn was not convinced by the explanation. During his second orbit, he reported seeing the objects again for miles in each direction, and when he landed, his first words were, "There are definitely critters out there." Astronaut Buzz Aldrin claims to have seen a UFO whilst on board Apollo 11 traveling to the Moon. He stated there was something out there. It was close enough to be observed. Mike Collins also observed something through the telescope, which appeared when focused to be L-shaped. They had to be careful as to how they reported it. They were not going to blurt out, "We have something moving alongside us. Do you think you're able to tell us what it is?" After all, those transmissions could have been heard by anyone at any point. "We could have been asked to turn back," he said. Dr. David Baker, the Apollo 11 senior scientist, confirmed that NASA and others were concerned about UFOs, as other staff who later confessed that UFOs existed. which led to some concerns on NASA's part. It appears that all the crews were drawn into an agreement that they were not to divulge any information whatsoever and must never talk about it to anyone for fear of ridicule. Edgar Mitchell, on the other hand, was a fellow astronaut and a firm believer in UFOs and believes we have been visited by them, which is why in 2008 he came out and told the world that. Edgar stated, "We have been visited on numerous occasions and that the government is covering it up." Just what did Edgar Mitchell know, and why was he so adamant that UFOs exist? Edgar, in recent years, has gone on record suggesting that, despite the fact he's never seen a UFO or extraterrestrial, his many conversations with people in the military and the intelligence community have convinced him that extraterrestrials have visited Earth, and the truth about that has been covered up. The British newspaper The Mirror came under fire from Mitchell after they quoted him as saying that UFOs came in peace to save America from nuclear war. It shocked everybody, including Mitchell. Mitchell went on to say, "I have told several sources about my connections over the years with military officers manning missile silos during the Cold War with the Soviet Union, who told me personally of UFOs hovering over their missile sites and disabling the missiles targeting the Soviet Union. Also that some of our military missiles were shot down by UFOs during some missile tests from a military station on the California coast. This was rather common knowledge coming from various military officers from years back. This is true. There's even footage. But sadly though, you won't find any of that footage anywhere. It's under lock and key." After the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, into orbit more than 60 years ago, the floodgates were essentially opened, and mankind enthusiastically began to utilize space for our own technological requirements. As of 2019, in fact, more than 40 nations have placed in excess of 8,000 artificial satellites into lower Earth, medium Earth, or geostationary orbit, though less than 5,000 of these remain in orbit, and less than 2,000 of those are still operational, serving the observational, communicational, and navigational needs of the human race. The remainder have since become space debris, floating aimlessly and ostensibly harmlessly through the blackness of the star-flecked void above us. But there is one satellite lurking around out there that might be not quite so harmless, according to some researchers. UFO enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists alike have long championed the idea that an alien intelligence placed an artificial satellite of their own into orbit around Earth for their own unknown purposes some 12 to 13,000 years ago. It's supposedly still up there, secretly watching us, biding its time, and every now and then turning up on an enigmatic NASA photograph that immediately causes controversy and debate. This dark, ominous object is known as the Black Knight satellite. Though it is not known who initially named the Black Knight satellite or where the basis for the entire scenario originally came from, proponents of its continued existence usually point back to the late 19th century for the first inkling of its shadowy presence. Brilliant Serbian electrical engineer, futurist, and inventor Nikola Tesla was born in 1856 and went on to become an eccentric visionary who spent the large bulk of his career working in the United States. He is best known for his participation in the development of the alternating current electricity system, as well as his mind-blowing insights regarding radio and wireless transmissions. In 1899, he was at his laboratory in Colorado Springs working on the technology for the so-called Wardenclyffe Tower, also known as the Tesla Tower, an experimental wireless transmission station which would eventually be constructed in Shoreham, New York. While engaged in this endeavor, he purportedly intercepted a strange, eerily regular radio signal, one that was unlike anything he had received before. Tesla was used to getting weird signals stemming from various earthbound phenomena, such as electrical storms or other unusual weather conditions, but this one was much different. So different, in fact, that he speculated the signals might be emitting from an intelligent source somewhere in outer space. Although he initially hypothesized that the signals might have been transmitted by Martians, later theorists put forth the conjecture that he was actually listening to transmissions from the Black Knight satellite. Oddly though, if Tesla really did believe that an alien civilization was sending radio signals to Earth, he was remarkably cavalier about it. He deemed the transmissions not important enough to interrupt his other work, and never tried to replicate the observations, even though he was definitely not certain what the signals were or where exactly they were coming from. While it is certainly possible that these mysterious transmissions were being beamed from an extraterrestrial source, whether from an alien satellite, a distant planet with intelligent life, or elsewhere, most astronomers believe that these signals most likely emitted from a pulsar, a rotating white dwarf or neutron star that sends out regular pulses of electromagnetic radiation. As the first pulsar was not observed until 1967 by Irish astrophysicist Jocelyn Bell Burnell and British radio astronomer Anthony Hewish, Nikola Tesla would not have had knowledge of them, and thus would have understandably attributed such a measured transmission to a civilization of individuals possessing human-like intelligence. But in 1928, nearly 3 decades after Tesla's reception, a novice radio operator in Norway by the name of Jørgen Hals also recorded odd transmissions, later referred to as LDEs, or long-delayed echoes. Again, the origin of these signals was not clear at the time and is still not entirely known now, though Stanford professor Ron Bracewell has introduced the proposition that the echoes are coming from an alien satellite dubbed the Bracewell probe that has been picking up radio signals from Earth and then retransmitting or bouncing them back down to the planet's surface, causing a several-second delay. This theory has obviously attracted the attention of those supporting the existence of the Black Knight satellite, who argue that the theoretical satellite causing these unexplained echoes could very well be the 13,000-year-old Black Knight. Adding more fuel to the speculation in more recent times was the news that a sequence of 15 quick radio bursts was picked up by Stephen Hawking's Breakthrough Initiative, a program founded in 2015 for the express purpose of looking for evidence of advanced alien life. Some have concluded that these signals, recorded in August of 2017, may very well be emitting from a sophisticated extraterrestrial species. Other experts, however, have urged UFO advocates to not get too excited, as the series of bursts was most likely coming from something far less exotic, such as a magnastar or a distant supermassive black hole. In 1954, 2 major newspapers in the United States, the San Francisco Examiner and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, reported that a man named Donald Keyhoe, a retired naval aviation major and UFO researcher, had claimed that the United States Air Force had discovered 2 satellites of unknown origin orbiting the Earth. As this was 3 years prior to the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik 1, eyebrows were understandably raised. In the articles, Keyhoe alleged that Harold Tolbert, then Secretary of the Air Force, was fully cognizant of the existence of these satellites and further had supposedly witnessed a silver disk flying through the sky on at least 1 occasion. Tolbert, for his part, denied ever having said any such thing, but the claims about the inexplicable satellites endured. Though skeptics have tended to dismiss Keyhoe's claims as unfounded or simply embellished or invented for the purpose of selling copies of his UFO book, apparently there was at least one other account of the unknown satellites originating from the Venezuelan Communications Ministry, albeit a few years later. The ministry was in fact tracking Sputnik when they noticed the presence of the 2 strange objects, which caught their attention due to the fact that they were orbiting in retrograde, moving from east to west. This was highly unusual, as there were very few known satellites launched from Earth in the years following Sputnik, and none of them were orbiting in retrograde. This anomaly would, in ensuing years, be added to the collection of accruing evidence that something like the Black Knight satellite was actually out there somewhere. In 1960, Time magazine published a story concerning the discovery of an unknown dark object in polar orbit around the Earth, which the United States Navy surmised was a Soviet spy satellite. The Department of Defense was quick to explain the sighting away as simply the leftover debris from an Air Force Discoverer 8 reconnaissance satellite which had broken up in orbit, but UFO researchers remained skeptical of this explanation. 3 years later, astronaut Gordon Cooper, while completing his 15th orbit of the Mercury Atlas 9 space mission, was reported to have sighted a UFO that later accounts allege was monitored by tracking stations. Researchers have also pointed to this event as another witness sighting of the elusive Black Knight satellite, but neither the mission transcripts produced by NASA nor the personal transcripts produced by Cooper show evidence of this incident occurring at the time. Though Cooper has denied seeing anything unusual during the Mercury 9 mission, though, he has gone on record as witnessing many other anomalous incidents, the first of which was a UFO sighting he reported while flying over West Germany in 1951. He also claimed to have seen a saucer-type craft landing near Edwards Air Force Base in 1957, and in his autobiography described many other such events he had personally witnessed. Cooper even testified before the United Nations in 1978, urging the world's governments to take reports of UFOs more seriously. Incidentally, in 1964, the British Ministry of Aviation announced a project known as the Black Knight Satellite Launcher, proposed as part of their Blue Streak missile program, which had commenced in 1958. Though there was actually a rocket called the Black Knight rocket that was used to test re-entry vehicles, the Black Knight Satellite Launcher project apparently never got off the ground and never put any objects into orbit. This abandoned project, while unrelated to the Black Knight satellite, around which so many conspiracy theories have risen, may be where the evocative name for the mysterious object derived from, however. Perhaps the defining moment of the Black Knight theory, as it is understood at present, occurred in 1998, when a strange photo emerged from the crew of the Space Shuttle Orbiter Endeavour during the STS-88 mission, the first American foray to begin construction on the International Space Station. This famous photograph showed what appeared to be a dark, vaguely mechanical-looking object in low Earth orbit, and it was this image that essentially codified the Black Knight theory and got researchers going back in time to search for earlier possible sightings of this bizarre, possibly alien object. Though it is still uncertain what exactly this perplexing object is, some experts have a fairly good idea. Space historian James Oberg and others have contended that the so-called Black Knight satellite in the notorious photograph is nothing more than a shiny thermal blanket known as a trunnion pin thermal cover that might have been displaced by the Endeavour's crew during an extravehicular activity, or EVA, spacewalk, and subsequently drifted off into space, where it was captured by a camera and served as the basis for an entire complex hypothesis concerning millennia-old alien civilizations monitoring Earth. Whether the thermal blanket supposition is true, or whether it is simply a cover story put forth by NASA in order to downplay the existence of a surveillance satellite of unknown origin, is still the source of much speculation, debate, and disagreement. But whatever the outcome of the situation, the Black Knight satellite remains one of the more intriguing space mysteries of the modern era.
The mystery surrounding the Black Knight satellite has long been debated. Indeed, Nikola Tesla is said to have been the first to spot it and was convinced that it was an alien artifact sent across the galaxy to reconnoitre us. But does it actually exist? And if so, what exactly is it? During the 1950s, something very strange manifested: the discovery of a mysterious, unknown satellite orbiting Earth in a polar orbit. It was allegedly broadcasting something to unknown agencies long before us humans had the technology to accomplish such a feat. There are even rumours that Tesla himself managed to pick up on the transmissions of this mysterious object in 1899. Tesla reportedly intercepted a signal, unlike any of the natural sources from Earth, such as electrical storms, that he had already investigated thoroughly. he announced he was receiving regular signals from an outside intelligent source. Today, there are many that believe that he was listening to a transmission from an orbiting satellite of unknown origin, later called by some the Black Knight. Actually, Tesla was more than likely tuning into the regular transmissions of pulsars, fast-spinning neutron stars that emit a rhythmic signal. Then, Time magazine announced that the United States had apparently detected the mystery object as it orbited overhead and immediately thought it was some type of Russian spy satellite. However, this story was crushed as the US Department of Defense announced that they had in fact identified it as part of an Air Force Discoverer satellite that had gone astray. In 1954, the St. Louis Dispatch and the San Francisco Examiner reported on the strange orbiting craft and asked whether or not there was something up there, 6 years before the first successful launch of a polar orbit satellite. Aviation Week and Space Technology also featured a small article about the mystery on August 23, 1954. They wrote, "The Pentagon scare over the observance of 2 previously unobserved satellites orbiting the Earth has dissipated with the identification of the objects as natural, not artificial satellites. Dr. Lincoln La Paz, an expert on extraterrestrial bodies from the University of New Mexico, headed the identification project. One satellite is apparently orbiting around 400 miles out, while the other is about 600 miles from the Earth. Pentagon officials thought momentarily the Russians had beaten the US to space explorations." Though the discovery of an Earth-orbiting satellite was reported in a couple of newspapers, and the respected astronomer Clyde Tombaugh, who discovered Pluto, was involved, the article was actually a synopsis of a book written by the UFO expert Donald Keyhoe. Interest throughout the years was growing about the mystery object after it was seen shadowing the Sputnik 1 spacecraft in 1957. When Sputnik 2 was launched a month later, Dr. Luis Corrales of the Communications Ministry in Venezuela allegedly photographed it, again shadowing the satellite. According to several reports, the unknown craft was in a polar orbit, and at that time neither the US nor Russia possessed the technology to place and maintain a satellite in polar orbit. NASA records show that their first polar orbiting satellite was launched in 1960. Such orbital paths are commonly used for Earth mapping techniques and observation. The mysterious satellite has been nicknamed the Black Knight due to its unusual shape and dark colour. What this object is intended to do remains somewhat of a mystery. The phrase Black Knight is extremely common. It seems improbable that such a name would have come from any spacefaring nations at the time, as it's such a common name, and has probably been assigned to any number of real government or military projects. In February 1960, there was a further report that the United States Navy had detected a dark, tumbling object in an orbit inclined at 79 degrees from the equator, with an orbital period of 104.5 minutes. Its orbit was also highly eccentric, with an apogee, the farthest from the Earth, of nearly 1,000 miles, and a perigee, the closest to the Earth, of less than 150 miles. A most mysterious object on a highly unusual orbit. During the 1960s, interests were once again fuelled after astronomers once again located the object on its polar orbit. Its weight was estimated to be over 10 tons, around the same weight as NASA's heaviest artificial satellite. Also, the craft was moving twice as fast as any other orbiting satellite. The Cold War was a time of deep-rooted suspicion and espionage, not just between the USA and USSR, but now, seemingly, with extraterrestrials too. Due to the Freedom of Information Act, declassified information recently released suggested that the mysterious object was in fact connected to a Corona spy satellite under disguise. The US Discoverer research satellite program was apparently a cover for the Corona project, which was intended to photograph sensitive sites in the USSR. What NASA tells us is that the mystery object was an unexpectedly large piece of debris from Discoverer 8, released when it jettisoned its film recovery capsule known as a bucket. Discoverer 8 apparently burnt up on re-entry in March of 1960, though no debris has ever been found. Several reports demonstrate Grumman Aircraft Corporation's interest in the Black Knight. On September 3rd, 1960, only 7 months after the unknown craft was first detected by radar, a tracking camera at the Grumman Aircraft Corporation's Long Island facility managed to snap the object as it passed over. At that time, the orbiting craft could be seen as a red light in an east-to-west orbit. The Grumman Aircraft Corporation received the data, but it was never released to the public. What on earth was this object? And what did they find? As we know, astronaut Gordon Cooper made his heroic orbit of Earth in 1963. On his final orbit, he apparently reported seeing a green, glowing object in front of his Mercury 9 capsule and moving towards him. This was confirmed by the Muche tracking station in Australia. Again, the object was reported to be travelling east to west. NBC were quick to pick up on this and wanted to know more, but were instructed not to ask Cooper any questions. The amusing part of this report was the official explanation for the mysterious green object, which they said were high levels of carbon dioxide which caused hallucinations. Also, let's not forget astronaut John Glenn's alleged comment, "There's critters out there." In 1973, a gentleman by the name of Duncan Loonan from Scotland went back and looked over old signals from the 1920s to see if he could make any sense of them. By plotting the delay times against the order in which the echoes were received, he could apparently create diagrams and star charts. By deciphering them, Loonan came to the conclusion that the signals must have been transmitted by some type of intelligent probe, originally from the binary star Isar, and that this probe had been in the vicinity of our moon for about 13,000 years. It would seem that others have been responsible for this. An object, photographed in 1998 during the STS-88 mission, has been widely claimed to be this alien artifact. However, it is more probable that the photographs were of a thermal blanket lost during an EVA. But further photographs have emerged, sparking new interests and theories. Secret spy satellite, alien craft, whatever the Black Knight is, it has got a reputation for turning up on NASA photographs. There are about 3,000 man-made satellites in working order around our planet, probably more if we were to count the secret spy satellites and other devices in orbit. NASA has stated that the Black Knight was nothing more than part of the Discoverer 8, nothing more than a piece of large debris floating around Earth. Ever since the Soviet Union launched their first artificial satellite into orbit in 1957, numerous countries have sought to compete. Most satellites nowadays are used for communication, navigation and exploration, with a few for surveillance and other secret stuff. Satellites are often visible passing overhead as the sunlight reflects back towards the Earth. Some may even be seen to blink on and off as they do their thermal roll. One side of the satellite is reflective to prevent the sun from heating up delicate circuitry, whilst the other side is non-reflective since there is no necessity to shield the whole satellite, which of course would be costly. Of course, there's one such satellite that is impossible to miss, the largest satellite currently in orbit, the International Space Station, at a huge 100 metres across. However, these satellites are relatively unexciting in comparison to the mystery surrounding one very old dark satellite, possibly 13,000 years old. Speculation or disinformation? Either way, it leads to much debate. The origin of the ominous name is part of the enigma, and it's impossible to discover who first called it the Black Knight, or indeed why. Probably the most recent and most cited evidence for the existence of the Black Knight satellite are the photographs taken by the crew of the Space Shuttle orbiter Endeavour whilst in low Earth orbit during 1988. These images are often labelled the smoking gun, the most definite proof of the existence of this satellite. However, on more careful analysis, this strange structure seems to resemble a piece of space debris. Sadly, this mysterious black object is probably nothing more than a thermal blanket that had somehow become dislodged during an EVA. According to the respected space historian James Oberg, in his superb history of the incident, STS-88 and the Black Knight, the lost blanket burnt up when it fell out of orbit about a week after it was lost. The only officially documented reference to Black Knight comes from the papers in regards the Blue Streak rocket, which was a British-made rocket used between 1958 and 1965. And for ufologists out there, this was the very same rocket that popped up in the Cumberland Spaceman case when Jim Templeton had taken a photograph of his young daughter with, after it had been developed, what looked like an astronaut in a spacesuit behind her. Templeton said that a Blue Streak missile launch in Australia had been cancelled because two identical characters had been seen on the firing range. A video feed from the ISS showed a similar object in 2014, which again sparked debate. Information currently circulating the internet gives mention to the military and space programs of both the US and Russia having acknowledged at least the possibility of the Black Knight's existence. So, claims of a 13,000-year-old satellite originally from ISAR, reportedly been spotted numerous times and photographed by NASA astronauts as it travels its polar orbit, transmitting unusual signals down to Earth for many years, in reality, this is probably not the case. It's possible that the Black Knight is simply a jumble of completely unrelated stories, reports of unusual scientific and astronomic observations, authors promoting fringe ideas, talk of classified spy satellites and so-called experts over-interpreting photographs. As for the received radio transmissions and secondary delayed signals, there can be numerous explanations for such long delayed echoes. None of these includes orbiting alien satellites, of course. Although, if an alien craft decided to enter Earth's orbit, record numerous transmissions, and then transmit them back to us 8 seconds later, it could well have the same effect. There are, of course, a number of things seen on NASA footage that may very well be some type of extraterrestrial craft or intelligent creatures living in space. And there are many further photographs of other unexplained objects in orbit of Earth. However, on this particular occasion, it appears that we may be able to put the long mystery surrounding the Black Knight satellite to bed. Yet, despite the rational explanations for the Black Knight satellite, the stories continue, saying it's up there, in the darkness right now, just outside the Earth's glow, watching, listening. Does it really exist? And if so, what is its purpose? The mystery surrounding the Black Knight satellite is sure to continue. And don't forget, we don't actually know